Welcome to the Retirement Choices of California podcast. This is our 7th edition, and we've talked about money, we've talked about life, we've talked about experiences, we've talked about travel, we've talked about culture, we've talked about how to get ahead, how to become an entrepreneur, how to live your life in a magnificent way. I had my dad on. He covered his experiences, his travels, and today I have with me one of my good friends and one of my mentors, Pastor Gerald Smith. He's with Parkside EDC. He's going to ask me a few questions about our topic today, which is mostly on retirement planning, talking about IRAs, individual traditional IRAs, also talking about Roth IRAs, 401ks, 457s, just qualified money, and what people need to do to prepare for retirement, what vehicles they need to utilize or have in their portfolio. So with that being said, Pastor Gerald Smith, my good friend, I want to make sure people know who you are. So just tell us a little bit about yourself quickly.
They call me Reverend Gerald, and I am the CEO and chairman of the board of Parkside Economic Development Corporation, which is a nonprofit here in Los Angeles that focuses on the Leimert Park and surrounding communities. We give away 20,000 or more in scholarships every year, and we also have a financial literacy program, two as a matter of fact. One is the Big Five of Money, which we focus on high school kids and make sure they're ready to handle money while they're in college and once they get out of college. And then we have BWARP, which is the Black Wealth Attainment and Retention Program, which focuses on families, and we try to get people to learn how to not just get money, but hold on to that money and pass it down and create some legacy wealth in our community.
That's awesome, and you were off camera too, so he didn't want to be on camera today because he has his Parkside EDC hat on, and he has his, is that Muhammad Ali?
Yes,
Muhammad Ali shirt?
The champ.
The champ. There
Yeah.
you go. Speaking of champs, you are a champion in the community. You're doing so much, and that was a good introduction. I'm also on the board to Parkside EDC. We just had an event, a breakfast for sponsors, supporters. It was primarily to give the kids scholarships,
Right.
so they can have a good boost or jump start to get to college and maybe pay some of those expenses. So congratulations for having another successful year when it comes to providing scholarships for our youth in our community. So with that being said, Joe, let's jump into the topic today, and we'll kind of move around and we'll jump around. We'll talk about some things that are dear to both of us, like golf. And the tournament is coming up.
Tournament's coming up last Friday in October.
Last
25th.
Friday in October, October the 27th?
25th.
25th, I should know.
Yep.
I should know.
Yes,
October 25th.
Yep.
And this is the 13th annual.
Mm-hmm.
That's amazing that you could do something like organize a golf tournament for 13 consecutive years.
Right. We took a couple of years off during COVID, but
Okay.
we've done it 13 times.
Okay, 13 times, and you typically have 100 plus golfers, sponsors. This year it's at Black Gold
Black Gold in Yorba Linda.
in Yorba Linda. So please, if you're listening to this podcast, seek out some information and become a part of the Parkside EDC golf tournament, which is specifically to raise money for scholarships for kids in our community.
Absolutely.
Okay, let's talk about money, Gerald.
Well, it's one of my favorite topics. Financial literacy is very important to me and to our community, and we're glad to have people like yourself that's been doing it for so long and has gained the knowledge and insight, and number one, willing to share that insight, I think is the most important
Absolutely.
thing.
Thank you for that.
So
Yes.
you said we were going to talk about IRAs today and a few other vehicles, but let's talk about how traditional IRA works and the main benefits it has for our retirement savings.
Right. So there are individual retirement accounts that allow individuals to put away money using pre-tax dollars, and the money grows tax-free. And when you retire, and let's say age 59 and a half or after that, you can pull the money out and pay taxes on the money that you pull out. So you've deferred your taxes essentially for maybe 20, 30, even sometimes 40 years. It's a great tool because it also lowers your taxable income, which lowers your tax liability. So if you're looking for ways to pay less in taxes and also supplement your retirement, then an IRA could be a very good vehicle. A lot of clients that I have multiple pots of money, or they have multiple vehicles. It could be a 401k, it could be a pension, it could be a 403b or 457. These are all various tools that you can use to have more income in retirement, and maybe even retire sooner than your peer or your peers who don't put money into supplemental savings accounts or supplemental retirement savings accounts.
Well, you named quite a few things there. So let's talk about the different types. Can you tell us some of the different types of IRAs, and how do we know which one is right for us and when it's right for us?
Well, the IRA, you can use annuities, you can use mutual funds, you can use stocks, you can use EFTs, but it's really just a way to defer some of your compensation and provide, long-term savings growth. Obviously, you can have your IRA attached to the stock market, where you might have great gains and sometimes great losses. So it just depends on your appetite for risk. The stock market is volatile, so sometimes people invest in the stock market using their IRAs maybe until they're 45 or 55, and then they kind of rebalance their portfolios so that less money is going into the stock market and more money is going into fixed accounts or fixed indexed accounts.
So is that help me understand, you're using a mutual fund inside the IRA, or are those totally two different things?
Well, the IRA is just, what the IRS looks at as a vehicle to help Americans to defer some of their compensation and have long-term savings. So if you want to use a mutual fund, stock, annuity, or an EFT, you can use that inside your IRA. So in other words, you're using a different vehicle where you'll get the growth of that vehicle. So if the mutual fund is giving you 4, 5, 6%, that's what your IRA is giving you. The IRA is just the chassis, if you will.
Right.
The mutual fund is maybe the engine.
Got it. And can you use individual stocks as your engine, or is this IRAs usually distributed equally amongst various vehicles?
Well, you can take your IRA and have a variety of investment vehicles. Some people really, and probably we should focus on simplifying things for people. So as opposed to getting complicated and trying to have multiple vehicles, maybe you just take one. You take stocks if you're young, and you can tolerate some loss, or as you get to be middle aged, maybe 50, you start looking at mutual funds where there's less risk, but there's potential for growth. And then as you get towards your maybe your 55th birthday or your 60th birthday, you start doing fixed accounts or fixed indexed products, so that you don't lose any money.
Right.
But if the stock market grows or if the stock market performs positively, you can benefit from the gains of the stock market. So you have the upside risk, or you have the upside potential, but no downside risk.
Okay. That sounds like something I'd be interested in.
I'm sure you have a lot of mutual funds and stocks. And
Now, this term IRA, you hear it a lot, and when I hear people use it, I hear this term Roth IRA come into play.
Yes.
So what's the difference and what's the benefits of a Roth versus
a
traditional IRA?
Yeah, so a Roth IRA allows you to invest money with after-tax dollars. So when you pull the money out, perhaps you'll be in a higher tax bracket. We don't know what your tax bracket will be when you retire, but a Roth allows you to pull money out of your account without paying any taxes. So you're using after-tax dollars going in, there's no tax benefits while you're contributing or while you're depositing money into your Roth IRA. The benefit comes when you pull the money out. So let's say in a traditional IRA you have $100,000 and it grows to be $1 million. Well, you have to pay taxes on $900,000 with a traditional IRA. However, with the Roth IRA, you put in $100,000, you don't have to pay taxes on that $900,000 gain. So ultimately, I think Roth IRAs are fantastic vehicles in the long run, but in the short run, there's no real benefits because the IRS doesn't look at the Roth IRA contributions as tax benefits. There's no tax benefit. You can't lower your taxable income by contributing to a Roth IRA. It's kind of like, even like a life insurance policy, right? You use after-tax dollars. So the benefit comes when the policyholder passes away, the benefit goes tax-free to the beneficiary or the heir. And also, as a policyholder, you can use the loan provision to pull money out tax-free. So tax-free is huge, whether it's tax-free bonds we won't get into, but the Roth IRA allows you to pull money out tax-free. Okay. That's the biggest difference.
Right. So just so I'm clear, the Roth IRA, as I put money in the Roth IRA, I still have to pay taxes on that income that I'm receiving.
That's right. Well,
but
so
I don't, at the end, I can pull it out with no
so,
taxes.
Exactly. So with your Roth IRA, it's like if your company pays you and you put that money into your bank account and then you deposit money or transfer money from your bank account to your Roth IRA. So it's already been taxed. Your employer on your pay stub, it showed that you made $4,000 net. That $4,000 goes into your checking account, presumably, and then you can, transfer money from your checking account, that $4,000 into your Roth IRA. Keep in mind your gross salary could have been $6,000, but your net was $4,000.
Right.
So you already paid $2,000 in taxes. So now that Roth IRA becomes something that's not taxed, or it's using after-tax dollars.
Okay. So when IRAs were introduced to me as an option, it was after I left corporate. It was after the 401k was no longer in play with the company. I was no longer depositing to a 401k, so that money was taken and put into an IRA account after the fact. So what would you say, most people working class have the opportunity to put money into a 401k. So how should one, choose how to distribute that money, and when it's time to move that money into an IRA, how do we determine the risk levels to make people comfortable with doing so?
So again, 401ks, your employer is the plan administrator, and they may have a financial advisor that chooses mutual funds or maybe some stocks. When you're with the employer, there's not much you can do. You can just, contribute. They lower your taxable income just like an IRA, but a 401k is typically in the private sector. So like you said, 401ks are going away, or I shouldn't say going away, but a lot of employers have moved from pensions to 401ks, and now they're even considering 401k Roth or Roth 401ks. But if you leave an employer and you have a 401k with that employer, you don't have to leave your money there. Even if you're not planning on retiring, but you're still planning on working, you can actually take that 401k money and transfer it or roll it over into another qualified account like an IRA, so that you can still make contributions even though you're not with that employer. So you got started with the employer, you started making contributions, maybe they matched your contribution, maybe 4%. By the way, take advantage of any match. That's free money. So if you take your salary and you take 4% and you put it into your 401k, they match that, which is free money. And when you leave that employer, when you separate, you could take your 401k with you. Don't leave your 401k there. I have a story that I shared at one of our client appreciation events recently where we have a client that actually had, well, let me tell you the story. He had retired from his employer. The employer was UCLA. He worked there for maybe 20 years. He had a 401k. He left there to start his own business, but he forgot about his 401k. So he left it with his employer, which is UCLA. And when he turned, I think it was 59 or 59 and a half, they asked him what he was going to do with that money that was left in his 401k. He said, "What money?" He totally forgot he had the 401k. Well, believe it or not, they said, "You have to tell us what you want to do with this money. We can't keep it here any longer." And he said, "Well, how much is it?" And they said $300,000. So he had $300,000 in his 401k that he totally forgot about. And so what we did was we helped him to transfer that 401k money into a traditional IRA where he could still make contributions as a entrepreneur, or even if he worked for somebody else. If he had income, he could put money into that traditional IRA.
Okay. So is there a limit to how long you can do that? Is there an end date to a 401k, or you can continue to do it?
If you're still employed, you can.
But what if you, like you said, what if I leave an employer and now I'm an entrepreneur?
Right.
But I want to keep my 401k, or
With the employer?
No, not with the employer. I take it and roll it into an IRA, or some other vehicle. Is there a time like that I have to take that money and use?
Oh, yeah. So
Yeah.
you're talking about required minimum distribution. So that's at age 73. So at age 73, the government or the IRS is saying, hey, you've deferred your taxes, or you've kept us away for all these years. You could have started at 30. You have a 401k. You haven't pulled any money out, or you haven't paid taxes on any of the money that's in the account because it was pre-tax dollars. So now the IRS is saying, hey, we want our money. It used to be 70 and it was 71. Now it's 73. Okay. So at age 73, it's mandatory that you start taking money out so that you can pay taxes. And the money that's left over, you can do whatever you want to do with it. So right now, required minimum distribution is about 4%, 4.25%, 4.5%. So if you have $100,000 in your account, you're required to take out $4,000. You pay taxes on it, and maybe you're left with $2,600. Some people, Pastor Gerald, don't need money, which is
Right.
kind of surprising to, people like you and I who worked hard and need our money. Some people ask me, do I have to pull the money out? And I say, yes, you do at age 73. Again, the government wants their money. They've been waiting long enough. I have a client, a good friend of mine, who he has qualified money. He's got a 403B, he's got a traditional IRA, and he has a 401k. He has, all this money, and he doesn't need any income because he's got a pension as well. So he worked for 30 plus years. He's got a pension, and now he's 72, and I'm telling him that he has to pull money out. He said, what do I do with the money? I said, that's a problem that we all would like to have. He doesn't know what to do with the money because his pension is giving him close to 100% of his pre-retirement salary. So, everything else on top of that is more than he needs, but we'll figure out a way to spend it. I'm telling him to take trips, to even help, sponsor some things for children, or he's actually a world-class fencer, and he was a guest on our show a couple of weeks ago, Daryl Taylor. Am I telling his business? I guess I am. Nothing bad. The point is he hasn't paid taxes on the money he saved into those qualified accounts, and next year he's going to have to start taking distributions.
Okay. So would it, and this is just something that came into my head as you were talking, as far as I'm in that situation now, I have to take that money out, so I can take it out in increments of it minimum of 4%, did you say?
Per year.
Per year.
About 4%, 4.5% per year.
Okay, so
You can take it out annually, or you can take it out quarterly, or you can take it out monthly. The mode of distribution is totally up to you.
does it make sense to take that money and reinvest it?
You ask good questions. So if you don't need the money, why waste it, right? Assuming you have, heirs, and you may want to leave them a larger sum, or you want your estate to be at a higher value. So as opposed to spending money that you don't need to spend, or buying stuff you don't need to own, or things you don't need, you just want them, you could reinvest that money back. And now that you've been taxed on it, you can put that money into a Roth.
Okay.
So you can take the required minimum distribution, RMDs, and you can take that 4%. If it's $4,000, maybe you put that into a Roth. So maybe it's a good idea to have a Roth IRA and a traditional IRA at the same time, or have a 401k and a Roth IRA, or have a 403b and a Roth IRA. So again, the difference is the IRA will allow you to lower your taxable income, lowering your tax liability. And what you're saying is, well, a lot of people figured that, hey, I'll defer my taxes because when I get older, I'll have less income, so there'll be less to tax. So I'll be in a lower tax bracket. But we don't know what tax bracket you're going to be in. I mean, who knows who the president will be, or whether it's Republicans or Democrats. So you could theoretically be in a higher tax bracket. Now, if you end up being in a higher tax bracket, which is, completely possible, having a Roth IRA makes a lot of sense because you don't have to pay taxes on the money you pull out. Good question.
So I have another question, and this is for my own education. You've mentioned a few times 403b. That's not a term that you hear as much as you hear 401k or IRAs or Roth IRAs. So tell me a little bit about the 403b and the benefits therein.
Right. So 403bs are primarily designed for nonprofits, for educators, teachers, and nurses. So kind of the same concept, using pre-tax dollars to supplement your retirement. Even like I tell my clients, 403bs and TSAs are the same thing. So you may have heard of a TSA, a tax sheltered annuity. Well, the 403b is the IRS tax code, just like the 401k is the IRS tax code, or the 457 is the IRS tax code. But 403bs are generally designed, or they're primarily for nonprofits, churches, nurses, and educators. So if you're an educator or you work for a nonprofit, like if you have people at the church that want to put money away for retirement, you would consider offering them a 403b.
As if they were employees of the church, or just church members in general?
Well, they have to be employees of the church, If they're members, they can get Roths on their own, right? But if they are staff, you can offer 403b by implementing a 403b plan.
Okay. Yeah. You mentioned annuities. How do, in your experience, when is it the right thing to do? I know I entered into an annuity several years ago thinking that money would be there for my daughter if something were to happen, but at the same time, acquiring income while it sits.
Right.
So give me
your earning interest while it sits. So annuities could be great vehicles, and there are some carriers or financial institutions that put riders on them, like guaranteeing income for life. And maybe what you're referring to is annuitizing your annuity. Like at age 60, you have $200,000 in your annuity, and you want to turn on your income stream. And so maybe you'll get $10,000 per year for the rest of your life, even if you live to be 100 or 110.
Right.
The great thing about the annuity is it doesn't run out. If you annuitize it, it's for the rest of your life. It's like a pension. A pension, you can't outlive.
Right.
You cannot live your annuity if it has guaranteed income. So when's the right time? I mean, I think it's a good idea. Most of my clients have annuities. So they're putting away $500 to $2,500 per month in their annuity, which happens to be a 403B. That's the chassis. The annuity is the engine.
Gotcha.
And with annuities, it could be fixed annuities where you're getting a fixed rate of return like 3 or 4%, or it could be a fixed indexed annuity where you're getting, right now, maybe 5, 6, 7, maybe even 8%. Some years less, some years more. I mean, you can get a double-digit return on a fixed index annuity. And then you have your variable annuities where they're in the stock market and you can get 20% gains, but you can also get 20% losses. So having an annuity, I think, is a good idea to supplement your income at retirement because not everybody has a 401k. Most people don't have pensions. Most people don't have, retirement vehicles through their employer. It used to be most employers, again, had pensions. They don't have pensions nowadays. But employers are not paying that extra money to institute a pension plan because it costs money. There's a cost to having pension plans. So by having your own annuity, I think you're ahead of the game because now you're saying, hey, I don't know about Social Security, or maybe you do have Social Security. The more income streams you have, the better off you'll be. The sooner you can retire.
Right.
Because if you have a 401k and that's all you have, and you end up with $300,000, it sounds like a lot of money, but $300,000 goes very fast. So you need to supplement that with something else. So maybe you have, a 403B, maybe you have a traditional IRA, maybe you have a Roth IRA, and maybe you have Social Security. I don't know, but the more income streams you have, the better. And really the key is to, be able to walk away from your employer and not have to go back to work. Like you don't want to retire and then go back to work. You don't want to retire and then go back to the same place you retired from, nor do you want to work at, McDonald's or Walmart, right? So by having more income streams is great, but you got to fund those, right? You got to have money going into those accounts. So you can't put $100 away per month at age 40 and think you're going to have $1 million at age 60.
Right.
It's just not mathematically possible. So I encourage all of my clients and all of our listeners to put as much money away as you can. I know it sounds great to talk about stocks and mutual funds, but if you just put that money in a savings account and you get a decent return, you'll be okay, better than the person that doesn't save any money.
Right.
But obviously you want to be a little more sophisticated, you want to be a little more proactive, and you want to find vehicles that give you good returns. I'll just tell you about the environment right now. We're in an inflationary environment, and we have high interest rates, and we just came out of a pandemic. So you see mortgage rates, now they're 7%. I talked to a client today that the mortgage was 2.2% because they got it back in maybe 2013. So you have to watch the interest rates. You have to watch the different strategies that are available and talk to financial advisors, talk to friends, talk to colleagues. Sometimes it's not good to talk to your colleagues because they may not know as much as you know, but they want you to think they know more than you. So they'll tell you something that may not be true.
Right.
So talk to your financial advisor and, by all means, save as much money as you can. My mother told me as a child that you should save 10% of whatever you earn right off the top.
Yeah.
So if you get raises, still take that 10% right off the top and put it into something safe. And it's worked for me, and it's worked for my other family members, and it's worked for a lot of Americans. And so I think we have time for one more question, and then we're going to wrap this up. Thank you so much for being here, Pastor Gerald.
No, thank you for having me. The thing that came to mind is we were talking about the IRAs and the 401ks and all these vehicles that those of us who are working, even if we're entrepreneurs, we have a business, we have something, but in today's environment, I'm hearing that the working somewhere for 25 years, 30 years and retiring is almost gone away. And you have people, be it Uber or Lyft, coming up with all these alternate ways of making money. So you may have one individual that has 3 or 4 gigs, if you will. What advice how is that advice you give them different from somebody that's on a job working?
Well, you got to be realistic, right? If you work for a company for 40 years, you get paid every 2 weeks for 40 years, there's a better chance to save, right? But when you have an entrepreneurial gene, or you just decide that you're going to work for yourself, some weeks you don't get paid, some months you don't get paid, some years you may make, $10,000, $20,000, $30,000. So it's harder to save. But I think a lot of these young folks are looking at larger gains, whether it be through some great business opportunity or some Bitcoin or some financial experiment, or they hustle.
Right.
But a lot of them will set themselves up for losses, because if you don't save any money, it's hard to retire, and you can't project that you're going to make a lot of money. Even though in your mind you say, I'm going to make a lot of money, sometimes it doesn't work out. And so if it doesn't work out, like if you don't have that hit, or you don't, sell 1 million pieces of whatever, pair of shoes or eyeglasses or cosmetics or whatever you're selling, if you don't sell a lot of those, then you may go out of business and you end up starting all over again. So no matter whether you're an entrepreneur or you're a employee for another employer, you always want to put money aside, and don't think that next year is going to be better. I mean, we hope it's better, that each year is better than the previous year, but in reality, some years entrepreneurs struggle. I mean, I struggled as an entrepreneur in my first several years, but I stayed consistent with putting money away and becoming an expert in my field. And so now I don't have the same challenges that I had as a younger entrepreneur. I think being an entrepreneur is fantastic. I've been an entrepreneur for over 40 years. I wouldn't have it any other way. But just because you want to be an entrepreneur doesn't mean that you're good at being an entrepreneur or running your business.
Well, that's a great answer. I just was wondering how, because I speak to young people who are in this gig economy all the time, and I'm trying to get some information so I can encourage them to save money. And a lot of times when the money doesn't come regularly, you don't have a plan, or you don't think you can afford to save anything because you're going to need it down line.
Stick around, Gerald, if you can, because maybe that's a good topic to kind of discuss, and also discuss more about Parkside EDC and some of the other things that you're involved with. So if you have time, stick around. We'll talk more. It was great to have you. Thanks for making yourself available. You are a leader in the community, so we thank you for all that you do. People have no understanding of the calls you get at the middle of the night, early in the morning, because some family has been devastated by a accident or a death or whatever.
Right.
So thank you for that. And even with that, you still have time to raise money to provide scholarships for our high school students. So God bless you, and thank you so much.
Well, thank you for having me. It's been very educational.
Yes, sir.